So hi everyone, great to see you here. Thank you for coming to Stop Treating Accessibility as an Afterthought, Concrete Steps of Building Inclusive Apps. So first of all, my name is Manuela and I'm a Senior Mobile Engineer at Antigua Mobile. You can find me on Twitter or on LinkedIn, and also I'm organizing Flutter Berlin. So if you are ever in Berlin, come to our meetups and say hi. Also, I'm part of the Flutteristas, and I see some Flutteristas here. And if you want to know more about it, go by the Flutter community booth. There will be some information about it. So first of all, I want to start this talk with a little story about inclusion. So when I was little, I really liked to draw, and I always showed off my artwork to my parents and to my grandparents, and everyone was praising me, but one person didn't have the reaction that I expected. That was my grandfather. So actually, my grandfather is blind, and basically he could not perceive my artwork, and that's when I learned what Braille is, how to write Braille. So you have a piece of paper and a pointy needle, and you make little holes through a paper, and then the blind person can feel the paper and knows what letter it is. So what I did was I picked up a piece of paper, had a sharp pencil, and tried to make a picture that my grandfather could perceive. And this artwork stood the test of time and is still saved at my grandparents' home. And that shows you one thing: people like to be included. So for this talk, I talked with a few people that have disabilities, and one thing they all had in common was they wanted to do their own thing without the help of others, and also they wanted to feel included. And if you think of tech, a lot of apps are already so ingrained in our society, like Instagram or TikTok, Snapchat, and if you cannot use those apps, you are basically not included in that moment, and that's quite sad. So yeah, I hope this talk inspires you to make your apps a little bit more accessible. So first of all, what is accessibility? Accessibility is the practice of making your digital products as usable by as many people as possible. What does that mean? It means that those apps are not, or the accessibility is not just for people with disabilities, it's for everyone, and it's rather a way of rethinking usability so everyone can use the apps. So for instance, imagine a parent holding their child, and in another hand they have a lot of shopping bags, and they have to navigate through a new city with maps. And they cannot use pinch to zoom, so they have to double tap to zoom. And if you have only pinch to zoom implemented in your app, this is a problem, and that's a situational moment where you might need accessible features. Also, there are 15% of significantly disabled people in this world, so those are all people that might not be able to use your apps. And if you are from America, I'm sure you know Americans with Disabilities Act. That one is already for a long time in effect. But in the EU, we have an EU Accessibility Act that comes into effect in 2025. And that states that all newly created products need to be accessible. You also have until 2030 for already released apps, but new apps that are released from 2025 need to be made accessible. And non-compliance can be fined. There is not yet information on how expensive that will be, but it's already clear that they will probably get some inspiration from the US. So if you want your app to be accessible and to also comply to the law, you should know this combination of letters and numbers: WCAG 2.2 level AA. Let's break that down. WCAG. WCAG stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and they say that an app should be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. That means someone who wants to use your app needs to perceive the app. So for instance, it's compatible with a screen reader. It needs to be operable, so someone who has a disability needs to be able to use the app, and understandable. And robust means that they have to work with some accessible technology. So let's break down AA. There are 3 types of accessibility levels: A, AA, and AAA, with A being the least accessible and AAA being the most accessible. And we have to shoot right in the middle, AA, to be compliant, and you can check on WCAG if you are complying already and what you need to adjust in your app. So let's talk about Flutter and accessibility. How is Flutter handling accessibility? So Flutter takes accessibility very serious. So usually if there's some bug in the accessibility settings or features, they will give that a very high priority and fix it very fast. Also, if you use material widgets or already pre-made widgets from Flutter, they usually have some tooltip or some accessibility setting already implemented. So you can, for instance, navigate the app with a screen reader and have some semantics. So, what are semantics, you might ask? So semantics are information that can be read with or navigated with a screen reader. So the screen reader will read the information that the semantics node has to the user. So a visually impaired person can navigate and use your app. So if you check this counter app, you see that I drew some boxes around the widgets that you can see in this app, and each one of those boxes represent a widget, and there's a widget tree in Flutter, as you know. And there's also a semantics tree. But not every widget node has a semantics node. So the widget tree looks different to the semantics tree. Why is that? It is because not every widget needs semantic information. So if we go back to the counter app, you see this floating action button, right, with a plus icon. And for someone who's blind, for instance, it's not important that there's a floating action button with a plus icon. It's important that there's a floating action button that increments a counter. So this is the reason why the widget tree looks different to the semantics tree. And if we look at how the semantics tree is created, we can see that when we write widgets, we create a widget tree. Then basically we have an element tree created out of that, which stores, for instance, state, right? And out of this element tree, the rendering tree is created, which then creates a semantics tree, which converts to the platform-specific objects like UI accessibility or accessibility node info. Platform support for accessibility is given for mobile, desktop, and web. And you will learn more about web accessibility at the talk for Rona tomorrow afternoon, which is very interesting. And also, one thing already, you will hear about something very interesting when you navigate to a Flutter web app. So actually, you will hear about an invisible accessibility button that you have to turn on. So for performance reasons, Flutter is not building the semantics tree on Flutter web apps per default. You have to turn that on. And I have made a video to showcase that. So once a Flutter app and then a traditional web framework.
Enable accessibility button. You are currently on a button inside web content. To click this button, press Control, Option, Space to exit. Reply efficient, focused email app, group. Shrine a fashionable retail app, group. Rally a personal finance app, group. Crane a personalized travel app, group. Build apps for banner. Visited link image. Flutter. List 5 items. Link. Multi-platform. Link.
So if you want to turn on Flutter web semantics per default, you can use this piece of code in your main method. So it is always turned on. Oh, I see there's a little bit of a formatting issue. I'm sorry about that. So now let's imagine we're all working on an app and we want to see what's good about the app and what's bad about the app. So we start to do an audit. An audit is a way to check the status quo of our app. And I would say it's a good way to do that for each one of your apps. So when you have time, today after the conference, you can maybe check your app with this method. So there are actually a few tools you can use, or you also do that manually. So the tools that you could use are, for instance, accessibility tools. That's something you can use during development, and it's created by Rebel App Studios, who are also here today, so you can check them out outside at the sponsors booths. And this is a quite nice package because it will tell you accessibility issues right when you develop. So it will show you a yellow and black border around the widget that is faulty or that has some accessibility issues, and then you can right away fix it. Then Google has this nice accessibility scanner app that you can download for Android, and you can basically scan your app with that and already see some issues and fix that as well. But I want to show you how to do a manual accessibility audit, because then you actually use the app yourself and see where problems could arise. If you want to check for accessibility on a device, please do that on a real device, because you have so many more options on a real device. So the dark mode is a real device, and the light mode is a simulator. So you see much more options on the real device. It's also good to have accessibility on your shortcuts, because sometimes it's difficult to navigate out of an app if you don't have appropriate accessibility implemented, and then it's great if you could turn off the screen reader right away. So to understand what we want to fix, we have to know what kind of disabilities are there in the world, so we know what to improve. So there are, for instance, mental health conditions, mobility impairments, cognitive impairments, hearing impairments, and also visual impairments. And it's great if you could read upon different disabilities so you understand how it affects the person. So I have created this app to showcase a few accessibility issues. So that's Bear Buddies, and it will basically tell you some information about some bears. The first thing we want to check is large font. Large font is one of the most used accessibility settings, because basically you just have to get old to use it. We lose good eyesight when we get older, and that's why, if I look at my parents' phone, they have scaled font. And when I started to get into accessibility, I started to add an analytics event into our app, because I wanted to see how many people are actually scaling up their fonts. And it's actually around 25% of the users, so it's quite a large amount of people. So it's very good to optimize for that. So one problem could be constrained text. So the text is too big for the widget. Reason, laws of the universe. If you have a widget that is 500 pixel high, you cannot have text that is 600 pixel high without being cut off. Solutions would be dynamic sizing or make it scrollable. Very easy fix. And also another fix or another problem is text doesn't scale. The reason is you used rich text or you constrained the font size in some way. Solution would be use text.rich instead of rich text. Then you have the accessibility function in that widget as well. Or check your packages if they are constraining your text in any way. The next point is colors and contrast. So there is something called color vision impairment, and that is basically an impairment where people see colors differently. So here you can see the true colors, that how it looks for me. I don't have a color vision impairment. And then you have 3 ways in which people can see colors. So there's quite a difference there. We can mock that and simulate that with Simulate Color Space on Android. Or for iOS, it's color filters. So when we look at our bear app, we see a danger level. And it seems like the brown bear and the giant panda have the same danger level, which is great. But actually, the brown bear is much more dangerous than the giant panda. So that already tells you if you have some important information, don't just show it with color, show it with an icon, show it with a text. Some other information needs to be given. Color is not enough. We also have to talk about contrast. So WCAG has specified that text should be 4.5 to 1 against the background. That's a little bit different when you have large text. Then you can have 3 to 1 against the background. Now let's get into the screen reader. And I would like to know who knows how a blind person is using an app. Great. So for people that don't know it, I have interviewed someone who was kind enough to let me film him so I can showcase how a blind person is using an app.
Gerne Zeit verbringen.
So I hope you understood everything. So you see, it's quite fast. So it's important to give only meaningful information because the information density it's a lot. So if you do anything custom in Flutter, chances are that you need the semantics widget to give semantics information to the screen reader to read out. And the semantics widget is a simple wrapper widget. So you wrap it around the widget you want to give some semantic information to, and you are good to go. The semantics widget has a lot of properties that you can use, but I think the sort key is quite interesting because it can help you to customize the UX for screen reader experience a little. So, for instance, if you want your screen reader to read your page in a specific order, you can give it a sort key. I have made some videos to showcase that as well.
Accessibility project. Last. Second. First.
So this is without sort key.
First. Second. Last.
And this is with sort key. So you see, you can change the order in which it's read. Then there is merge semantics. So whenever you have a place where you have information that needs to be read out together, you can use merge semantics. That's very good for checkboxes, for instance, or for the danger level in my app. So that's also a wrapper widget. Wrap it around the two semantics nodes that you want it to be read as one.
Danger level. High. Danger level. High.
So it's much more nice for the user to have to navigate once than twice. And it also can get confusing. Then there's block semantics, which blocks out the semantics information of everything that is behind that widget. So for instance, it's great for pop-ups. And you only want to hear the information there. It's also a wrapper widget. You wrap it around your pop-up, and then only that text is being read out.
Warning, they're behind you. Warning, they're behind you.
Then there's exclude semantics. Do you remember the plus icon on our floating action button? It's not so important, so we can exclude information like that. It's also a wrapper widget, so you wrap it around something that you want to be excluded from your semantics information. And I have made that now with a big text in my app. Usually you wouldn't do that, only for very unimportant things. Oh. Okay, it's not being played, but what you will see is basically this big text will be skipped. I made a vision checklist that you can use to check for screen reader experience. So first of all, perform tests with Android Simulate Color space or iOS color filter, check for contrast, considering offering dark mode, check for large fonts, also check for the semantics with the screen reader, and also check if your accessibility traversal is making sense UX-wise. This is how, in which order the widgets are read out with the screen reader. The next point in our audit are gestures. So now think of how you are holding your phone. So a lot of people are used to hold their phone in one hand. Then there's also two-handed usage and also cradled. And depending on how you hold your phone in your hand, you have a different thumb reachability. That's why you see the floating action button always on the right bottom side and not somewhere else on the top or something. So it makes sense that you have all the important content in the green area of your app. Okay, for gestures, it's important to also check to also check the tab areas. That should be 48 to 48 pixels or 44 to 44 pixels. Also, you should evaluate your gesture widgets and offer customization if applicable. Let's go to cognitive. I'm not sure if every one of you know Links Car or linkscar.com. That's a UK-based car website, and it's used for a bad UX example because it is quite a lot. You see a lot of blinking, a lot of animations, a lot of content, and it's a little bit difficult to use. And someone who has, for instance, seizures has a big danger here because we have this blinking animations, and we also have this chicken that's running around. So for someone with ADHD, that's really difficult to navigate through that. And so if you design for a app or a website, please keep in mind that you keep the content as straightforward as possible. Here is the cognition checklist that I've created. So maybe you can disabling animations, check if content is overwhelming, and give more time for certain actions so that there's no pressure for the user. And also think of customizing your app. Now let's get into testing. So as a developer, we want to sleep well at night, and that is done through testing. So every code we write today is legacy code tomorrow. So sometimes we adjust some features, and then we need to, and then we might break something. And one thing that we can do is use the accessibility guideline class to do some tests. There we can check with those matches the WCAG specifications if we are meeting them. So for instance, the Android tap target guideline or the iOS tap target guideline. And this is how a test could look like. So we're checking for the tap target guidelines and also for text contrast guidelines, and see if we are satisfying all requirements. Also, you can test for overflows with scaled font, just to see if everything is on screen and looks nice. And you can also check semantics with tests. So you can verify if your tooltip or your label is there. One thing to note, you need to be very exact with this test. So if you forget some thing, it's going to fail. So it is quite lengthy to write it, so probably better for main flows than for some edge cases. Then you can test the UX for screen readers. Remember the traversal, so you can check in which order the semantics labels are read. If anything breaks during tests, you can use debug dump semantics tree just to see the whole semantics tree, so you see each semantics node, and then you can check if you forgot something to specify or if some semantics node is gone, so you always know what your screen reader sees. You can also visualize semantics with show semantics debugger on material app. You can set it on true, and then you have this nice view to see all the semantics node with information. I have also created a testing checklist, so use accessible guidelines to check for compliance with VCAG requirements, test especially your main flows, and also set text scale factor for tests to check if scaled fonts break your app in any way. Now let's get into the process. It's actually quite easy because it all boils down to communication and awareness. If you want to make an accessible app, you have to talk to each one in your team and also across teams. So I was working at an e-commerce store. If a specific promotion is only on a picture, someone who's using a screen reader will never see it. They just can't access it. So everyone throughout the company needs to know about accessibility and what it entails so they can basically adjust their content. So one thing to enforce this are checklists. So if every team has a checklist with some accessibility checks specified, you already have a good starting point. Actually, the Flutter docs have a great accessibility release checklist in their docs, so feel free to check it out. And now I have some further checklists that you can use. So for instance, if you want to do a user test, because someone who is actually affected can point you to actual issues in your app much better. So if you perform a user test, please have a quiet room, minimal people, and also give some expectation management. Probably your app has some issues. And also pay the test persons, because a lot of the times people do not get paid for such things. Then design checklist. If you design an accessible app, check for sufficient contrast, have a good color palette, have the tab areas big enough so you can actually tap it, and think of what should happen when user turns on large font. Also for development, use the accessibility scanner during development, write tests to refactor with confidence so you feel better and sleep better at night. The person that has the most to do is the QA. They have to check through everything, so give them a big hug when you implement accessibility. So yeah, they have a lot of work to do. So the last part of my talk is about the people actually that are affected. So the first thing that I heard when I was interviewing people is that things break sometimes with updates. So there's a case that Instagram has a problem that you currently cannot check who watched your stories. You can see who liked your stories, but you cannot see who watched them.
Manuela Sakura Rommel updated their story 2 hours ago with a photo. Blue sky, cloudy, lamppost, roof, window. Story viewers, story viewers. Story thumbnail 1 of 1. 45 viewers, button. Settings, close, viewers, but delete, but viewers, heading. Viewers, heading, 7.59. Jasmine. More, but direct message. Alicia Oganowska reacted with face with heart-shaped eyes. Adult. Logo other, night sky, painting, porthole. Adult, night sky, porthole.
So the username
Adult,
won't be read out.
Logo other, night sky.
So the username won't be read out. You have to actually navigate to the profile to read the username. Then a new pattern can be a blocker. While a blind user was showing me YouTube, the YouTube premium ad popped up, and he struggled a bit navigating out of there. So whenever you introduce a new pattern, please keep in mind it's going to be hard for people that need accessible features.
Wiedergabe. Volle 1 Monat. Musik. Musik Downloads. Eine eigene App. 1 Monat Test. 1. Musik. Music.
And then I get inventive when an app is not accessible to perform an action. So Snapchat currently has a problem that, you cannot navigate out of the friends settings or add friends. You can't add friends, you cannot do anything on that screen. Basically, if you are on that screen, that's a dead end. And I made a video of this, so you can also see that. And that basically makes the app unusable for people that use a screen reader.
Friends, add friends. Chart, chart, screenshot, chart, screenshot, chart, screenshot, chart, chart, screenshot, chart.
Like I tried my best, nothing is possible. And the user said, you know what, Manuela, but it's not so bad. I can actually kill the app and get out. So, yeah. I hope with this talk I could spread a little bit of awareness. So my goal is for you to implement about accessibility or implement accessibility instead of just talking about it. Because there's a lot of talk about it, but rarely I really see well implemented accessibility in apps, even on big player apps like Snapchat, we saw Instagram. And yeah, we have the chance to change someone's life, make someone's day better, so they don't have to kill your app. Thank you so much for your attention. I have a QR code here with a few links about accessibility. Also, there's a talk feedback form, so if you can give me feedback on the talk feedback form, that would be very nice. Yeah, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask away.